Good morning and welcome to the Parents Roundtable. Experts and everyday parents discuss common parenting issues. A telesummit produced by Joyful Parenting Coaching in support of United We Parent. United We Parent has a mission of unifying, strengthening, and informing the parenting community. In doing that, we want to create a safe, trustworthy, and non-judgmental space that embraces parents of all family dynamics. Before I get started this morning, I want to tell you about two things that United We Parent is offering. One are its two books coming out this summer, Dadly Dads, Fathers of the 21st Century, and Amazing Moms of the 21st Century. These books really capture the mission of the organization in that they represent 50 women and 50 men who have all sorts of different parenting styles. And that's really what United We Parent is about. The second event is the United We Parent Conference, a day-long in-person event in Southern California in August, designed to provide resources for all parents, regardless of gender, sexuality, marital status, how or when you became a parent, ethnicity, age, income, or any other measure by which you might be judged. We're focused on creating an interactive environment to collaborate in harmony with other parents to create a happier and healthier parenting community. So, especially if you live in Southern California, I hope we'll see you in August. I am Elizabeth Stitt of Joyful Parenting Coaching, host of the summit, and today I am really pleased to announce our expert. Melanie Hempe is going to talk to us about she's going to talk to us about video games and electronics use and media use and how do we manage all that with our kids. In 2011, Melanie Hempe uncovered the dark world of video game addiction as she realized her son's gaming had finally crossed the line. As she began to talk with other families and neuroscientists, she quickly realized she was not alone. It turns out, like Melanie, families everywhere were not prepared for the tidal wave of technology that was flooding their homes as children and teens were being lost in the world of video games and social media. With an RN degree from Emory University, Melanie founded Families Managing Media. She draws upon her medical background to demystify the questions of why technology has had such a strong grip on our kids and why it's replacing normal childhood activities. Families Managing Media has delivered hundreds of seminars throughout the Charlotte, North Carolina area. She writes for Charlotte Parents Online Blog, has been seen on local news stations like WCNC and WCCB, and has been quoted in Real Simple and Psychology Today magazines. Melanie provides easy-to-follow, scientific information and practical solutions for children of all ages and stresses the importance of real-life connection in a digital world. And of course, now I have to note the irony of the fact that Melanie and I, of course, are meeting via technology.
Yes.
But
we're using it as a great tool.
Yes, exactly.
Not a tool.
But I'm so delighted to have you here and to hear about how you balanced media in your home and replaced video games with sports and music and good manners. I like that one especially. And managed how to keep social media and video games from controlling your kids.
Yes.
So welcome, and my extreme gratitude for you being here with us. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, great.
Thank you. So would you like to start by sharing something of your own story?
Yes, I'll be happy to do that. I noticed when, with the introduction, the little slip almost to the drug addiction instead of the screen addiction. And, honestly, it is very much like a drug addiction. When you have a child who is so immersed in their screen world. So what happened to us, six years ago, my oldest son became addicted to his video games. And at the time, I just thought it was going to be something he outgrew He went through middle school and high school, playing a lot of games. And this was back when all of us moms thought our kids were getting very smart on their computers. And so we thought, well, they're not getting in trouble, right? So they're home. We know where they are. They're not out drinking. They're not doing drugs. So we thought everything was fine, and it wasn't fine at all. And he ended up going to college and ended up dropping out of his first year, like many boys do, because of video gaming. He just couldn't control what was going on. And so I had seen symptoms and I had seen the warning signs, but I didn't recognize what they were. Things like dropping out of sports, dropping out of hobbies, just becoming isolated, and really kind of dropping out of your family. You know, it was really hard to get him to come to dinner upstairs, you know, or, you know, even to a birthday party. You know, nothing was as exciting as his game. And being a nurse, I'm sort of disappointed in myself for not catching it sooner. So, you know, like all parenting issues.
Yeah, no.
Hindsight is wonderful, right? So, so I have 4 children. So he was my first. And so when he went to college and all this happened, and we picked him up and we realized something had happened and he did not finish his classes. And he told me, he told me, Mom, World of Warcraft did something to me and I'm very depressed.
Oh.
So, yeah. So he recognized at that point that in the last week of school, he didn't even get out of bed.
Yeah.
So, so we got home. I jumped on it. I started doing a lot of research. I got connected with Dr. Andy Doan out in California. He wrote the book Hooked on Games. And for the first time, I realized this was a problem. This wasn't a childhood, you know, stumbling block. This was a real problem. There were real chemicals that he was actually addicted to, high levels of the dopamine that were produced when he was on the game. And it became a craving, and it was driven by his pleasure center and his limbic system and a lot of brain involvement. And see, that was my biggest, you know, aha moment. Was it all made sense, because he did seem like he was addicted, but I couldn't understand how you could be addicted to an activity like that.
Yes.
But, you know, but I learned that it was just like a gambling addiction.
Okay.
So that's the way parents need to look at it. And the other way they need to look at it is it's not their kids' fault. And, you know, they are thrown into these worlds of the games and social media. And what I didn't realize as a parent was there was so much science behind it. So, you know, the people that
oh, you mean from the game design?
From the game design.
Pull them in.
Yes. Just like a slot machine. It is designed just like Las Vegas. And
it's really insidious, isn't it?
Well, it's, you know what? It's we live in a country where, you know, you can make money doing lots of things, and, you know, more power to them. I mean, it's like that's their job, and they hire neuroscientists and behavior scientists and attention engineers, they call them, to capture the attention of the user. And when it's an adult, we have a fully developed frontal cortex, and we can judge a lot better than when it's our children. You know, I never really thought about how our kids are not adults when they're 16.
No, right.
You know, it takes 25 years for the human brain to develop. And so when my son was 16 and he was taller than me and he had a mustache, you know, I thought he was an adult, and I wasn't even thinking that he couldn't make the right decisions on his screen. But I realize now that parents have to be so much more involved today than we ever have had to be, because we have to understand brain science. We have to understand what video game companies are doing. We have to understand what the smartphone, smartphone and social media is, what that whole world is about. And we didn't grow up with it. So it's just really hard for us to jump in. And so that's that's what happened. And that's why Families Managing Media got started, was from my experience with my own family in my home. And at their school, at my kids' school, I was talking to the counselor, and I said, I wonder if there's other families that need help with this, because this really hit me just out of the blue, but it was right under my nose. How did I miss it? And so we ended up, I made a little flyer and put it on the door of the school. And I just said, if anybody's interested in talking about this, if you have video game conflict in your home, if you're arguing with your kids, if you just got a gut feeling that something isn't right, we're going to have a little meeting over here for coffee in the morning. And then we're having another meeting in the science room that night. We had 116 people come.
Wow. That is amazing. I mean, I'm gathering groups of parents all the time. And, it has to be like a citywide event to get those kinds of numbers.
I know. So then I knew.
Yes, it's so true. That's really, really tells you. And was this, so you said it was the middle school, so it was parents of.
It was K through 12. I had parents there from K through 12. And so we all talked, and I had done, I put together a slide presentation on brain development and warning signs for video game addiction and social media addiction, and then solutions. Because what I found out through all my research, there are a lot of people talking about the problem, but very few people really have solutions. And we have awesome solutions. And all of our solutions have come from the experience of many, many families, many, many moms, vetted in science, vetted with the doctors that we work with, vetted with the psychologists and the psychiatrists, and all the counselors we work with.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's first just give me the quick rundown on warning signs, and then let's spring into solutions.
Okay, all right. So what you want to look for, depending on whether it's your son or your daughter, they're a little bit different with the warning signs. Okay,
oh, interesting. Okay,
apart a little bit. So for boys, usually parents have trouble with video games, or boys have trouble with video games. And for girls, most of the time, they're not as interested in games, because games appeal more to boys with the testosterone loaded activities, and girls are more interested in their social media. But they still involve screens. Both things still involve a screen. And so there's certain things that happen with a young boy. When they're very young, they start to they just want to play on the game more than they want to be outside. Mm-hmm. So that's a real telltale sign for a young mom or of a young child if her son would rather be inside on his screen than outside, because developmentally speaking, boys need to move a lot. They need to be outside, and they need to like balls and sports and dirt and being with your kids.
No, right, exactly. Climbing trees.
So climbing trees. And so if your son is not doing age appropriate, social things outside with other kids, that's a warning sign. If they're not wanting to like even ride their bike, or if they're not interested in other things other than their screen, other things that will start to happen is they will start choosing the screen over even mealtime. They will have meltdowns when you try to take it away. They will start to get up in the middle of the night and want to play. Now, this starts happening around middle school, but I have seen it as young as 10 years old, where young boys are sneaking into their parents' bedroom to get their game or to get their phone or whatever it is. And,
right.
And what happens is their fight-flight mechanism is triggered on a game, because when your brain is watching and playing and becoming immersed in this world, this video game world, your brain doesn't know that you're really not there, right? It thinks that you're in the battle, but really you're on your couch at home, but your brain doesn't know that, so it triggers the fight-flight response. And when it triggers the fight-flight response, you have a lot of different symptoms that we know. You start sweating, you get angry, your cortex begins, the blood actually starts to leave the frontal cortex and go into the area of your brain that is there to fight that enemy. right? You got to run. And so if your little brother walks up and you feel like he's getting ready to touch your screen, you whack him. You just hit him.
Yeah.
Or maybe you get mad and you throw the controller, right? A lot of parents realize, my son is getting violent, like he's throwing things. His temper is getting really high. And this happens after about 20 minutes of interactive play on a screen. If it's a real high level game like Call of Duty or even Minecraft, sometimes they just get angry. And so when they start exhibiting these more physical signs of like a drug addiction, it's like, moms, we call it, they're in a game coma. We can't even talk to them. They can't hear us.
Right.
And I know now why, because after that immersion starts to happen, their brain starts to focus in that limbic area of their brain.
So they really aren't sitting on your couch.
No, they believe that they are in the battle. Their brain doesn't know the difference because the way video games are made today, that's how they're made to be very immersive. It's not like Pac-Man where you're chasing a little ball around, or Tetris. It's not anything like that. And so, to the credit of the game companies, good for them. They figured it out, right?
Well, I don't know. I'm not feeling very generous right now.
I know, but they do it really well is what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, but to the with the problems in families, mom doesn't understand what's going on. Mom has never really played a video game.
Yeah.
So she doesn't even know what her son is even doing.
Right.
And I was guilty of that. I never played the games with my son. I didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I think if I had maybe played or at least watched him, of course, they were awful. So I didn't want to watch it. But, I just thought it was just a game. It wasn't going to hurt him.
Yes. And what about the girls?
Okay, so with the girls, what happens is they actually become so attached to their phone that they can't go anywhere without it. So that's when you know that you got a problem. And I'll tell you why this happens. The reason why they get so attached to their phone is because when they are on a phone, if you've noticed, when you're on your phone, you see lots of photos. And you see lots of photos of faces. And girls love to send selfies, and so do boys. But girls are more enamored with the faces and all the images they see. And so what happens when a young girl is on a phone? Her oxytocin is getting released. And, we all know what oxytocin is. It is the cuddle hormone. It is a hormone that when a new mom has that new baby and they hand her, and I'm a labor and delivery nurse, so I've seen it so many times. So you hand them this baby that is really quite unattractive. But she believes, he's all squishy and, but she falls in love with that baby because oxytocin is being pumped by the gallons. Okay, not quite the gallons, but dad doesn't have so much oxytocin, so he's like, well, I don't really think that baby's that cute. But he bonds a little bit differently a little bit later, but mom will immediately bond. This oxytocin fills her system and her dopamine is released, and she is just so excited about, and thank goodness she is, because we need to bond with our babies.
Yes.
What happens with a young girl, especially as she hits puberty and she starts bonding with her phone, and it just becomes her be all end all. And actually on MRI studies, we see that she actually is falling in love with her phone. It's the same area of her brain lights up on an MRI that lights up when a loved one walks in the room. It's the same area. So now we know what happens when we fall in love with our babies. We will protect them and guide and guard them with our life. And so this is kind of what happens with a teenage girl. That phone becomes the most important thing to her. And I'm simplifying it, but I'm not really simplifying it. This is really exactly what happens. She is connected chemically to this device.
Wow.
She's almost like feeding it, almost like a baby, okay? She's got to post every few minutes. Some girls will post 100 selfies a day. They have or Snapchat.
Right. Snapchat.
Yes, they have Instagram accounts, and the social media becomes almost like an umbilical cord for her, to this baby. For boys, they love their phones too, but it's a little bit different. For boys, it's testosterone, and they want to win, and they're going to beat and show, and they look at things that are very different on their phone. They look at cars, and they look at girls, but they don't look so much the way girls do, and they don't communicate quite as much as girls do.
Yeah, unless the girls are pinging them and pinging them and pinging them.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so are the solutions similar, or are the solutions different for boys and girls?
The solutions are, pretty similar. You've got to start to limit their time. And mom has to do this, dad has to do this, the parent has to do this, right? Because your frontal cortex is developed and theirs is not. It's very simple. You know that it has to be balanced. They don't know anything about balance. They're not there yet. They don't understand balance. Teenagers are very, they overdo everything. They exaggerate everything, and that's okay. That's their developmental place in their life. That's what they do. They are seeking low effort, high reward activities. That's very common. They're seeking novelty. They're seeking risk taking. They want to have fun at all costs. And that is what the screens provide for them. But now that screens have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and they're in their pocket now, it's a whole different ballgame. Parents used to be able
Okay, so excuse my ignorance here. Are the boys doing video games on
Yes.
on their phones too?
Yes, every
Okay.
video game is on a phone. It's
Okay.
not just the game console, even though they can do the Xbox and the PlayStations. Every game is on a phone because every phone is connected to data. So the solution is to pull back the reins, to only allow certain things at certain times of the day, not 24 hours a day. And the way to do that is actually not to give them phones that have data on their phones. That's crazy that we are allowing our kids as young as 10 years old to run around with the internet in their pocket 24 hours a day. Very distracting. It is very addictive. It's not going to help them. And research has shown over and over and over that the distractive nature of the small screen, the smaller the screen, the worse it gets, because it's on your body. You have it in your pocket. The distraction and their ability to never be able to really think deeply is a problem. When you have your phone and it buzzes every few minutes, you really can't think deeply about what you're doing because you're constantly brought back up to the phone, the deep layers of thought. The other problem is that the screens begin to replace all the natural, normal childhood activities. Mm-hmm. So as a parent, we have to be very purposeful about making sure those activities are still in our kids' lives because it's going to be really hard for them to manage it. So we recommend that you limit, and on our website, familiesmanagingmedia.com, on our website, we have a lot of ways to do that. We have a lot of ways to limit and to manage, but just on an overview, I will just tell you that the solution is based on parents being parents. Okay, right? Age-old solution, and having the confidence to pull it back because we are so swayed by culture, and we in our ignorance, and we're not ignorant, but in our ignorance around the current screen culture, it causes problems, and we have to run to catch up a little bit. But we are smarter than our kids. Trust me, we are, and we know what's best for them.
Yes.
So we have to trust our instincts. We have to know that 8 hours a day on social media is not a good thing, regardless what culture says, regardless what their best friend is doing. It doesn't matter. We smile and we say, honey, we're doing it different. Our family's different, and we are not doing that. Sure, you can have social media, but we're doing it for 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
We are not doing 8 hours a day. And a lot of parents now in our organization, we have worked on different things where we don't allow our kids to have their own private social media accounts. We allow them to have a family account with us. So that's a wonderful solution, because anything that you are going to put on social media is not private anyway. So mom and dad are going to see, your family's going to see. For boys and video games, we allow casual play. In our home, since I have 4, and then since I messed up so badly with my first one, we went game free. So I have 2 boys that are twins that are 12, and they have grown up since they were 6 years old without video games. And they are quite normal. They are fine. And if they went over to your house and they wanted to play, that's fine. We're not legalistic, but we just don't have video games in our house. And there's no way they're going to have a smartphone. Now, they can have a basic phone when they get a little bit older, and I need to call them. But they're not going to have a phone that has data. They will have laptops at school, and we will deal with all the school technology. But because there's so much technology in school, we really don't want it at home all day when they get home from school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are just some of the solutions.
So some of the questions that are coming up, one is our own use.
Yes.
And I've totally shifted in my life, because I used to be a teacher. So I used to be on my feet dealing with people all day.
Yeah.
And now my entire day is on my computer.
Yes. Yes. Now, first of all, our brains are fully developed. All right. So it's not going to have the same effect, even though we know, and you know, that if you're on your computer 8 hours, you feel yucky. You need to get outside. You need to move. And we need to model for our kids the right behavior. So we like to say that at 3 o'clock, when your kids come home from school, mom has to shut her laptop, and you put your phone on silent, and you spend purposeful time talking to your kids, being engaged with them, and doing things with them, because the studies show that the average parents only spend about 3 minutes in meaningful conversation with their kids every week.
Mm-hmm.
Besides, what are you doing for lunch, and when am I picking you up, that custodial conversation. I'm talking about meaningful conversation. So we have to be careful to model it, and it's very hard. My work is also all online, and it's all on a screen. So I have to also remember when they come home, and there's not that many hours really that they're with us.
So true.
So you have the whole day to do your work, from 3 to 6 or 7 when you're doing dinner. You have them in the kitchen with you cooking. You have them talking with you. You're helping them with their homework. You're reading. We believe that you should be reading even out loud to your kids. Even when they're teenagers, it doesn't matter. You need to read a lot. You need to model the things that are important, because their little brains are developing. And what they do as a child is going to totally affect what they do as they get older. And when you are helping them pave those pathways that are healthy pathways, then that will be a huge benefit for them later. They will always have screens with them. They do not need to learn how to use everything on a screen when they're little. Plus, social media is designed for the average 6-year-old. So it's really not hard to do. Yeah. And many parents say, well, this is the digital age and they need to learn. And you're right, they do, but they don't need 8 hours a day.
No, they don't. They really, really don't. And my daughter went to an alternative progressive school, K-8, and they had no computers, and she had very, very little screen time, and she didn't have any problem transitioning to high school and, learning the programs that she needed to learn.
Yeah, it probably took her about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think so. The
benefit that she had by the benefits that you set up for her will be that they will last a lifetime for her. Just that love of reading, learning how to be alone. When you teach your children how to be alone without a screen, they will never be lonely.
Yeah.
Right now we're teaching our kids that you can't ever be bored. You have to be stimulated all the time. That is not a good idea.
Okay, so that was going to be my other question, was that my other concern on the other side of things is that in having kids, that the way parents get kids to go out and play is to schedule them into, lots of different sports and lots of different things, so that there's no, it's get in the car and go and do this, get in the car and go and do this. There's no unstructured time.
That's right. Okay, so that is a problem. However, I think that we kind of went the other way. I think there were so many parents that were so worried about the schedules that they thought, okay, my kid is way too scheduled, so we're just going to have time at home. And what happens is this happens when they're
okay.
So it is always better to have them in an activity, even if it means that they get tired and they fall in the bed at night and they're tired. That's a good thing. But it's in our culture today, we don't let kids outside and do free range play the way that we used to. Yes. So if you don't feel comfortable doing that, and when I was growing up, it was like we were outside, we weren't allowed in the house. And
yes.
my mom was like, see you later.
Yep.
And so we got real creative, because when you have that unstructured play, that's when children learn about life. And Stuart Brown wrote a great book called Play, and it explains the science behind play and how important it is and how adults need to play. None of us are playing enough, but for children especially, even animals need to play.
Yes.
For children especially, that's how they learn how to do life. They practice life in their play, and it's not play that mommy orchestrates.
Right.
It's exactly. Play. However, I believe that as your children get a little bit older, that mom does need to orchestrate activities, whether it's art lessons, music lessons, sports, and more sports, because children need to move a lot. And we coined a little phrase, we call it ATM, and it's really easy for your viewers to remember. ATM stands for attachment, touch, and movement. And every child, every day, needs attachment to their family unit. They need physical touch by those people that love them, and then they need a lot of movement. Yeah. And the final piece to that is you can visualize the ATM machine, and they're usually outside. So nature is very important. So if you can remember those 4 things, those are really 4 very good tips. And none of those tips, they don't have anything to do with the screen.
Right.
And the screen actually removes a lot of those things from our kids' life. The screen will remove nature, touch, movement, and attachment to their families. So as parents, we have to be mindful of that. We have to, every day I tell my moms, wake up and think, what am I going to do so my child gets these 4 things today?
Yes. Melanie, thank you so much. Truly, thank you for sharing your story and really letting us know the depth of the problem that we're facing here. And I love these practical solutions for putting some limits on and for protecting our kids.
Yeah.
So.
And I want to just end and say that my oldest is doing really well. He ended up going into the Army for 5 years and grew up and really had a nice detox from his screens in the Army. And he's doing really well now. And my daughter grew up without social media, and she is now a scholarship athlete at a major university, doing very well. And my twins are almost 13, and they're doing great in their game-free home. So.
That is really wonderful to have the example. And thank you so much for both your story and the really concrete knowledge. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.